Even though today was supposed to be the day, Donald Trump decided not to lay out his plans to address his conflicts of interest between his companies, his new job, and being, oh yeah, the President of the United States. We're going to try to sort out all the possible problems. Then, what the incoming Trump administration says about its plans on how to deal with the media, what to share and not, has a whole lot of people worried about when it comes to access to the president. Trump wants to change the rules, but the question is, will he be able to? Also, the U.S. relationship with Russia is already complicated. We've got a Russia expert here to tell us about whether or not it's going to get even more complicated once Trump moves into the Oval Office. Good evening. Welcome to RFL. Richard French here. Thanks for joining us. Well, tonight we were expecting to talk about Donald Trump's unveiling of his plan to address the conflict of interest concerns arising from his various businesses. Now, that was until he postponed it till next month. No date yet announced. But his inauguration, that is on the calendar, and that is for January 20th. So time clearly running out. Certainly he'll have a lot to talk about. His new hotel in D.C. was built in the old post office. It's owned by the federal government, by the way, so Trump, he's leasing from the government that he will be running. Plus, foreign leaders and diplomats are expected to stay at the place as it is steps from the White House, obviously raising a whole new set of concerns. That's just one of the many Trump businesses that he's got holdings in, as well as many countries where they subside. Now, of course, he'll be dealing with all of these nations once he moves into the White House. Then there are the kids. Just this Tuesday, 2 days ago, Trump again said his sons, they would run the company, so there would be, in his words, a firewall between Trump, the CEO, and Trump, the commander-in-chief. But yesterday, 1 day later, Don Jr. and Eric, they were sitting at the head of the table when Dad met with America's top tech leaders. And by the way, there were also cabinet nominees at the table, and sitting on the table was Trump water just for optics' sake. The boys, they're also working on a tower in Manila, and they just met this guy, Jose Antonio. He a major developer, partner in the project. Also, the Philippine president just happened to appoint Antonio as special envoy to the U.S. You get the drift. Then, of course, there's Ivanka. She joined the president-elect at his meeting with the Japanese prime minister. By the way, her company negotiating a licensing deal with a Japanese apparel company whose biggest shareholder is, yes, the Japanese government. Ivanka also expected to have an office in the White House, right where the First Lady is usually located. Now, for more on this, let's bring in Rick Unger. Rick's the host of Steele and Unger on Sirius XM, POTUS channel. He's also a senior contributor at Forbes.com. And Rick, we laid out the litany of potential conflicts, and trust me, we could have gone on, as you know, probably better than me, for more than an hour here on just the subject. But is it your sense, first of all, that he's going to run out the clock and say, trust me, I'll get to it? We get to January 20th and we have no real clear idea of how this is going to work?
It's kind of hard to say, and it has a lot to do with what you think was the reason that he canceled. Some people say that it's just so complicated that he needs more time. I have a little different view. Remember, he's been out giving speeches, but this would be his first press conference in a very long time, and I don't think he wants to answer questions about Russia. I really think that's why he delayed it. I don't think that the plan he's going to give us is all that complicated. He basically gave it to us in a tweet. He says he's going to turn over his interest to his sons, and there'll be no new deals while he's the president. In the meantime, as you correctly pointed out, his sons have been everywhere. We saw them in the meeting, as you referenced yesterday, with the tech folks. They have been a part of interviews with the various potential cabinet nominees. It's very, very bizarre and unusual.
You know, you mentioned the tweet that Trump set out saying the media, of course, we're all evil here, but the media here is trying to make this much more complicated. Well, his own office said it was so complicated to unpack in their meeting with all the experts that they needed more time. But let's not let facts get in the way of a good story. Nonetheless, when he says no new deals, that's a distinction I don't know with too much of a difference. First of all, how practical is it if you have a real estate empire not to do new deals over the course of, let's say, 4 years for this conversation? And secondly, old deals, new deals, how does that exactly work?
Yeah, it seems unlikely. And, you know, you told the story of what happened in the Philippines, and let's remember that the president of the Philippines is one very scary dude who is running hit squads to kill drug users and drug dealers without the benefit of trials. And yet Trump invited him to come visit him at the White House before he even invited the Prime Minister of England, who is our close ally. The Turkish situation is even more disturbing. He had a conference call with the president of Turkey. He mentions on the call his good friend, who is in fact a partner in a building that he's doing. I think you may have referenced that. All of a sudden, the people in that company, it's the Dohan Group, who have been critical of the president on their media holdings, they're arresting them. They're arresting them. They think that they can gain influence over Trump by putting his partners in jeopardy. This is becoming exceedingly bizarre.
And he doesn't seem to care, Rick, in that if you're going to put up this pretense that, hey, there's this firewall, the kids are going to basically be running it, I have nothing to do with it, why do you have him in the meetings? Why do you have him vetting the Interior Secretary nominee? Because, let's be clear, Donnie Jr. likes to fish and hunt. That's the expertise he brought to that conversation. I can't make this up. He's almost sticking his thumb, thumbing the media to say, come get me. Now, my question comes to lawmakers and the law. Obviously, Democrats, they've even proposed something. It's not going to go anywhere in the Senate here, they want basically the Senate, the president to play by the same discretion rules that they do. That won't go anywhere. But there are a host of other questions. If you can break down for people what emolument means as it applies to this, but also the Stock Act, because people say how it was designed in 2012 to deal with Congress, it actually is application to the president, president-elect, I should say, because he's not going to be the managing partner anymore, but he will be getting, equity from the firm.
Well, the Stock Act is interesting, and there are some members of Congress who kind of think that that might be their way into this situation as a way to go after him. I'm not sure. Traditionally, the Stock Act has applied to presidents and people who have stock, securities, easily tradable. And, it raises the opportunity for inside trading if you're in a position of power like that. It has yet to be applied to a real estate scenario, and it's not at all clear if it can be. But they're going to try. As an attorney myself, I could certainly make the argument going either way for why it should apply. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any leverage gained by use of the Stock Act.
But it would also require, this is where the tricky part gets in, that the SEC would have to get involved, and the SEC chair obviously is going to be appointed by Donald Trump. And more than that, the prosecutors who be bringing the case will report to the person that was appointed by Trump. So again, we get into how incentivized people will do this. Now, I know the U.S. Office of Government Ethics, highly concerned about this, but the two ranking members in the House and the Senate, Republican members for the committees that would do the investigating, seem to say, hey, if it's a good faith effort, if he says he's going to do it, let's give him some rope here and go ahead. Talk about who will do the investigating and how the courts would work on this. Is this more political or is this more the law?
Well, it's theoretically both. Clearly, look, I mean, what's happening in Congress, and it's pretty clear now, they're looking for the investigations that can be launched to the extent that Democrats in Congress can force them, which is not so easy, considering they're not in control, that will basically interfere with the first 100 days. Right now, the Democrats are at a bit of a loss. They're a little bit rudderless, a little bit leaderless, if you will, and they're looking for those things they can hit on to interfere with what we're all expecting. So that's the political side. The legal side is interesting, but there are a lot of legal issues that have been raised by the incoming Trump administration that could keep the courts busy for a long time. I'm kind of interested in the legal side of how the Stock Act and some of these other conflicts issues will attach, how they go after it, who goes after it. It's a fascinating question. So I guess the sum and substance is they're both at play here.
Rick, great job as always. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Great being here.
All right, coming up next, Rick touched on the media. Well, Donald Trump is continuing to battle the media. That's not news here, but what is what his administration could do to shut the media out completely. It is a huge story. I'll break it down with the table right ahead.